Thank you for joining today's presentation on TripSpark's StreetsWeb. StreetsWeb is a modular, multimodal AVL solution. It allows you to manage fixed route, demand response, or flex routes in one easy, simple to use installation. What's so great about StreetsWeb? It's a leaner, a more budget-friendly ITS solution. It's web-based. There's no software to install on your PC. It allows you to add users easily without additional costs and has the option of either being hosted by TripSpark or installed on-site at your location. It's going to free yourself from the office. The AVL data is available from any Android or iOS-based tablet, and you can access StreetsWeb over the internet from any PC. Low-cost hardware solutions are used. Simple AVL black boxes with GPS, engine connection, and accelerometers are available. You might even be able to leverage an existing third-party application that you already have in place. The information is able to be used in configurable alerts. You can access historical playback to see events as they actually occurred. There are 3 points that we'd like to bring to your attention. StreetsWeb is lightweight. It has less costs than associated with typical deployments. It provides real-time computer-aided dispatching and automated vehicle location functionality. The real-time data allows you to use it for passenger information systems. And the built-in Google functionality that we've created provides your staff with an easier, more user-friendly experience. This translates into less training and fewer errors. StreetsWeb allows the creation of alerts. You can configure alerts and notifications based on the severity of incidents. Real-time information allows you to monitor items like AVL events, schedule adherence, or other policy violations that you deem are important. Historical performances are tracked and monitored. Playback events as they actually occurred. You can improve your reporting and analysis and see where your vehicle was at any particular date or time. This data will allow you to use real information to make real decisions. You can improve performance and optimized routes. I'd now like to introduce Cameron Laird, our Director of Technology and Development, who will go through and provide an overview of the functionality of StreetsWeb and some of the features and benefits that we've just discussed.
Thanks very much. So my name is Cameron Laird. I'm Director of Technology for TripSpark Technologies, and I'm going to do the demonstration portion of the webinar for StreetsWeb. The StreetsWeb application is a web-based application, so you actually run it in your web browser. I'm using Chrome in this instance here, but you can run it in any of the major browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or Internet Explorer. It works across all browsers and all platforms. When you log into the application, this is what you're presented with. You can see the application here on the splash screen. We're presented with a menu down the bottom here, which contains all of our features as well as some of our configurations, where you can actually go in and configure the application right from the web browser. This is all configurable on the user level, so each user is able to have a custom layout for themselves when you set up the system. So if you have dispatchers versus supervisors versus administrators, you can have a different set of options displayed right within the menu for both configurations as well as the components that they're allowed to view. We're going to focus on the scheduling and the monitoring components of the application today, and we're going to walk you through some of the features that are available within StreetsWeb to manage your fixed route operation. The first area that we're going to just take a look is at points. Points is where our stops are located. So you can see here I've got all of my stops located around the map in this local area of Milton, Ontario, where we're doing this demonstration. Each point is configured with a number of attributes about it, so we can click on one of these, double click on one of these, and you can see you can set a abbreviation, which is kind of the code for the stop. You've also got your name that you can give it, which is kind of more friendly name. You can associate notes with these as well as determine if it's a timing point. And this will all be done at the beginning when you're setting up your schedule for the first time. Once you've got all of your points configured, we are going to move into assembling them into routes. And the routes are basically, just like I said before, they are containers that contain the stops, and they're arranged in different patterns. We're just going to take a look at one of our routes really quickly, just to sort of show the detail that we're actually capturing. So this route here, we've got a number of attributes that were captured about this. We've got an abbreviation or a code. In this case, this one's called RTE2. The friendly name is to Maine, which is what the public would actually see when they're looking at either the schedule on paper or on the bus or on our MyRide passenger information system, as well as a description. So this one just sort of tells you that this operates in a continuous west-east direction to a specific area and some of the stops that it makes along the way. We've determined that this is a bus transit type, but you could also sort of segregate your routes if you've got a tram or a rail type operation. You can sort of segregate them as well. And each of the directions is also customized to display how we like to see it. So if on your published route documentation you've got westbound to hospital as being your outbound and inbound as eastbound to Crossroads, we can line this up to match what you prefer. The other thing I'll just point out here is that we also have versioning within the system. So in this case, this one is versioned the 28th of July of 2015. If you want to make a modification to this route, you can just basically copy it and create a new version so that you're able to work with it and have different variations. So if you have, say, a summertime version of the route versus a wintertime or a special event type version of the route, you can just create a new version, even if you're just adding and removing stops. The other thing too here that you can set is actually the trace color. So you can see here, this one's set to like a blue color. We can actually pick how the route shows up in the dispatch screen, as well as that corresponds to what it shows up as on the passenger information system. So once we've gone ahead and created sort of the basic container for the route, the next step that we go through is actually to collect all of the stops that are going to show up on that route. So once I click here and hit click find, I get a list of all of my stops. And you can see the stops that are clearly defined along this blue route trace. Those are the stops that are on this route. But we can also click on one of these. It shows up in the selection here. And to add a stop to a route, it's as easy as just kind of dragging it into place. So I can actually drag this one to show up right here. And now that stop is on the route. In order to actually get the route trace, which is how we're tracking whether the vehicle is on route or not, we would actually use some of the plotting tools here. So you can see we've got this plot the route. I can then just draw with my mouse on the map where that route needs to go. And this is using the Google Maps API. So basically, it's actually going to automatically, by clicking from point to point, it's going to connect the dots between those points using the street network. So it makes it a lot easier to actually draw the route. Once we've gone ahead and drawn our route and collected all of the points, the next logical step is actually to create a number of patterns, which is how this route might operate over certain courses of the day. In this case, on the westbound direction, we've got 3 different patterns, you can see that there's one pattern that starts from Thompson and Maple, and then 2 that start from the Crossroads at different times of days. As well as with the eastbound direction, we've got one that starts at the GO station and one that starts here at Commercial and Heslop. So with these, we can create as many patterns as we want. So if we want to create, say, an express that would go from Commercial and Heslop down to the Crossroads with maybe only a couple of stops, we can just create a new pattern and create as many patterns as we need to sort of show the different variations in our schedule. Once the patterns have all been created, the next step for us to go through is actually to define some of the service offerings. So here you can see the reason that we have various patterns here is that they line up with these different service offerings. And you can see during different times of day, we're actually tracking the bus a little differently. And that comes down to the actual transit times. We can just specify that at certain times of day, we're going to have transit times. If, say, it takes a little bit longer to get from point A to point B during the morning or the afternoon rush hour, we can very easily go in here and optimize that so that this is picking up and generating our trips properly. The other thing that we're able to specify here is our dwell time, and here's where the changes come in. You can see at certain times of day, like at 7:53 in the morning, in this one particular pattern, we can see that we're actually dwelling for 20 minutes at this train station. So we can do a lot here, and it really helps us generate the trips very efficiently and very quickly is by specifying effective operations times between different stops, as well as our dwell time. It allows us to optimize our trips. So basically what we can do is if we have a starting point where we know that we think that it's going to take 7 minutes to go between these two stops and 6 minutes between these ones, after we've had some time of actually monitoring the operation and seeing how it goes, we can make some adjustments for our next sign up and actually go in here and change these in order to generate our expected trip times. So with that being said, once we've actually created all of these times, the next thing for us to do is to create some trips. And these trips are based on the patterns. So the patterns that we defined before, we can actually see that they show up here. We start off with pattern 1 and move into pattern 2, and then later on in the day we show pattern 3. And these are all generated automatically. So essentially, in order to build some trips, what we do is we select the pattern that we're interested in. We select the starting point and a start time. So say I'm just going to add some trips here that go from 7 in the morning until noon on a 30-minute headway. I can just click go, and this will create a number of trips for me. So you can see that it's automatically gone in and populated all of these yellow rows, which obviously already exist because I already had my trips created. But in this case, I've created a set of trips that are all ready to go. It's automatic. I can then go in here and make any modifications that I want. So say, for example, I know for a fact that there's going to be a little bit longer of a dwell time at a specific stop. I can actually go in here and modify this manually, and then it'll update the rest of the trips for me. So this is creating trips at the start and the setup of StreetsWeb. This would actually be done by TripSpark people. We would go through and work with you to understand your schedule, and we can generate this from sort of like your paper copy of your street schedule. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step. So once we've created our routes, the next thing we're going to do is start assembling those into a schedule. And the schedules are relatively flexible. Basically what we do is we create a schedule, and I can create a version of a schedule again. I can have one that's marked in production versus I can also have an active schedule. So we can work on these schedules in a state of inactivity. So if we want to work on changing things up and changing some variations, we can have a schedule that's not in production that allows us to modify it, and it'll prevent people from actually publishing it, etc. So what we do is we basically specify a from and a to date that this schedule is valid for. So this one's going for about a year, from July 30th of 2015 until July 30th of 2016. And this schedule, it only operates Monday to Friday. And the next thing we do is we actually specify some service validity. This particular fictional or this particular service transit agency only has one service, which is called a weekday service, but we can also specify other services. So if you have a Saturday specific service or a Sunday service, or maybe you've got school day versus holiday versus parade day, whatever it happens to be, we can create various variations of service that we can apply on any given day. And we've got some very flexible rules. So for example, if we did not want this weekday service to operate on the 19th of August, I can just click on that and take that day right out of the schedule. And you can go through and you can specify what days you actually want this service to operate on. The next thing we do is we basically specify all of the routes that are going to operate on this schedule. So if you've got specific versions of these schedules that you want to have, so say you create a new version of Route 2, you can make sure that you select from the drop-down list the version of the route that you want to see. And you can select that and add it into the route. You can also specify your garages that are valid in this schedule, etc. And then basically from there, once you've done that, we go through a blocking activity where we'll actually create the units of vehicle work that will actually be completed by a vehicle. And once we do that, we actually publish a schedule. And what that does is it takes all of these rules that we've created throughout this this activity of creating the routes and the schedules and all the trips, and it unrolls it into work that will be completed over the validity period for this schedule. And before we move on, I just wanted to point out, you can see here the navigation concept is that it's tabular. So you can see that I've opened this schedule editor window. I can also navigate back to the route edit, and everything kind of stays open for me until I close it with the red X. So it's quite a familiar user interface, and it's relatively easy to use. The next part of the demonstration I'm going to go into is into this monitoring phase. And the monitoring phase is basically broken into a couple of different activities. And this is really where your operations kicks in after your schedulers have gone ahead and created all of the plan for you by building the schedule. So once we've done that, the next step is for us actually to start assigning work. So we go into the work assignment page and we pick a day. I'm picking the 19th of August here. But here you can see at the top, I've got a list of all of my vehicles. These are all the vehicles that are available to me. And down below, I've got a list of all the work or the blocks that are going to be completed by these vehicles. In this case, what I can do is I can basically pick a vehicle from the list and I can just drag him onto this down into this bottom part. And that's now assigning vehicle 901 to do this section of work, route 1A Industrial West to East, starting at 5 in the morning and going until 5:40 p.m. at night. And this one in particular is a full block. It's going for, a full day's work. So we're going to have the same vehicle operating on that. But as you go through, you'll actually notice that we've got some smaller blocks here that can all be strung together. So we've got some 20 or 30 minute blocks, and this is just the way that that the schedule is broken out. But you can basically drag your vehicles and fill up their day and say, I want to have a vehicle that's going to interline between Route 2 and Route 8 and then Route 7, and it can go through and actually, as you're assigning vehicles, you can fill up a day's work for one particular vehicle or another. Now, the other thing we can also do from the screen is a multi-day assignment. So if we want to say on a Sunday night, we want to set up the schedule for a full week, I can come into this screen here. I can say I'm going to go from the 17th until the 21st. I'm going to do this assignment. And when I click this on, now vehicle 901 will be assigned to Route 1A for the entire week of August 17th. So that's the work, how we're dragging work here. We can also do other things, like if we have employees in the system, we can also drag employees to match up with this work, which is purely for a visibility standpoint. We don't have any login terminals or anything like that with StreetsWeb, but it just allows you to actually create your employees within the system and apply them right to the work that's being completed, so you know who completed a particular piece of work. At the top here, you can see a number of different elements about a particular vehicle. You can see I've got vehicle 901 is a new flyer from 2010. It's a model D40LF, which is a low floor 40-foot vehicle. You can see that I can also track the days that we've serviced these vehicles, when they've had an oil change, when the inspection date is. So for example, this one here, this number 1203, this one hasn't been serviced since in June. So we may not actually want to have this one assigned, because I might want to take this one out of service and have it looked at by somebody. So this application also allows us to do a little bit of management of our vehicles, and we can actually go in and show you what that looks like. We can find all of the vehicles in the fleet just by searching for them, and I can take a look at 1203. And right from this screen here, I'm actually able to update these. So if this one has had a service as of today, I can just go ahead and mark that here and mark that it's been serviced. I can see that it's been inspected, or that it's been had its oil changed, even as low as when it's been washed last. You can also customize these screens, so some of these fields don't show up. So if we don't want to have these fields show up in the work assignment screen, we can actually cut them out and make it make it a much simpler screen to have a look at. So that's the work assignments. The next thing we can also do is I'll just sort of show you what the Work Explorer looks like. So for any given schedule, I can pull up a schedule and I can actually have a look at what the work looks like that needs to be done. So I can have a look at, say, at some point into the following weeks, I can actually pull up that day's work and you can see what it looks like. And you can see that I've got operations running from 5:15 in the morning, and they run until about 20 to 8 at night. And as you click through each one of these work events, you can actually see the elements that are contained within there. So you can see I've got these timing points that we're crossing. We've also got some standard stops that we're crossing that we're not too concerned about if we're measuring time against them, but we do have these all of the events for each of the pieces of work tracked here, so you can actually see exactly what they look like. And you can look at that on a per route basis. You can see the different routes, and you can also see that from a holistic point of view. So once we've actually got all of our work done, assigning all the work, the next place we're actually going to take a look at is the vehicles monitor. And this is really where your dispatchers are going to live. And I'll point out a couple of things on this the screen, just so that you're aware of kind of the way that it's kind of laid out. So this, you can see we've broken this out into 4 different quadrants, and each quadrant is configurable. We have the ability to actually edit these. So I've got 3 different layouts I'm going to take you through today. And these layouts are all user configurable, so we can create them how we want. In this one, I've got a list of my vehicles, which shows you the current status of each vehicle. You can see their schedule adherence. I've got these guys operating a little bit slow, but they're still within the tolerances that we pre-configured. You can see what route they're operating on, what direction they're headed in, what their actual last stop was, so you can see the last point that they crossed. And then down below, you can see we've got this event log. The event log is showing me all of the different events that we're capturing in the database. So you can see when there are violations on schedule adherence. You can see that we're also tracking speed here. So this is a pre-configured event type that we've set up for this system. But you can see that we're just tracking the speed on a per vehicle basis, as well as when the trips are starting, when they're ending. There's a whole host of different configurations that we can set up and different events that we're capturing. The one thing also that you'll notice is we were using Street View. So the Street View here is quite handy, and this actually came from some experiences we had as a company and looking at how dispatchers are using different CAD AVL solutions, including our own. And what we found was that a lot of users were actually having a browser window open that had Street View to allow them to look things up. When we see where a position of a vehicle is, they're actually looking at that to help with customers who might be on the phone that are trying to ask where a stop might be, etc. We've actually included this. All of these different components can all be full size, so I can just double click on the gray bar of the map, for example, and I can get a full screen of this map. And I can bring it back just by double clicking again. Same thing with Street View. If I wanted to see closer what that looks like, I can just double click there. They're also filterable, so you can see up here I've got these different numbers. These all are all configured with different filter options. So this one here, I might just be looking at vehicles that are on time. I might want to only look at vehicles that are late or those that are off route. This is a vehicle here who's heading toward his next piece of work. And I've also got a view where I can look at all vehicles. I can also open up the filter and do this if I want on my own. So if I wanted to filter by transit mode, so say I'm tracking some demand response vehicles here as well, I can specify I only want to see fixed route, etc. I can look at different times, so I want to just see vehicles that have pulled out 30 minutes in the past or pulling in 30 minutes in the future. There's a whole host of things that I can build, and I can create my own custom configurations, these presets that'll show up as these little buttons here at the top. Same thing with the event log. I can take a look here. You can see I'm looking at pull in and pull out. I can also look at this one here is just it doesn't have a name. This one here is looking at everything. I can just look at just speeding events, and I can actually double click on these and see where they've actually occurred. So I can see that at this particular point, vehicle 1001 had a speed of 18.6 kilometers an hour. The same thing goes for any other one. So I can see where they're actually performing their pullouts and where they're performing their pull-ins. I can just double click and actually see those things popping up on the map. If I move to the next view here, I can actually look at a route ladder view. So you can see here I've got number 2 Main Street. I can also create a multi-route ladder view at the top here, so where I can actually see 4 different or as many as I want different routes at a time, and I can see where the vehicles are and where they're supposed to be. So if you look at this, you can see a small solid line here, which is the actual position for this particular vehicle. Is supposed to be here at Drew Center westbound, but this dotted line is pointing to where the vehicle should be, and he should be approaching the Milton GO station by this point. I can also hover over the vehicle and you can get a lot of information about them. What work they're working on right now, the direction they're headed, the route that they're on, the time that we saw an update from them last, and you also get their status. These colors will actually correspond to their vehicle's status, their adherence status, whether it's on time, early, or late. And those are configurable tolerances. Right now I've got it set where it's 5 minutes, plus or minus 5 minutes before you go early or late, etc. I can also double click on these routes and change which route actually appears here. I can also take a look at the different metrics that I'm tracking. I can also expand the information, so you can see if I was to, I'll just remove some of these routes from here just to see. You can actually have a more detailed look at what each of the different stops, whether I'm looking at just timing points or all the stops in between as well. And I can collapse that, I can turn them on or off, etc. So it depends on the amount of information you want to see on the route ladders. I've got the same event log here, so some dispatchers may prefer to look at the view this way, where they're managing a few different routes at the same time. And all they really care about is seeing it in a route ladder view. You can also get the event logs down below. The next view here, this is another configuration, and I'm really just showing off some of the different components we have. Again, you've got your vehicles list up the top. I'm just looking now, I've filtered this down to just the vehicles that are on time. And down below here, you can see we've got this work view, which is actually showing where the vehicle is relative to the work that it's completing. So here you can see that this vehicle has just left this Milton GO Station stop, and you can see that it's got its scheduled time of arrival and its scheduled time of departure. And this one here left the Milton GO Station about a minute early, and you can see that these italicized values here are actually the predicted time that the vehicle is going to stop at that stop and perform that action. So in the case where you have a dwell time of more than a minute or so, you would actually see the departure time reflecting that. Like, say I'm going to sit at the train station for 20 minutes, you would actually see the scheduled arrival time at 13:10 and the departure time at 13:30. And if there has been any change, like if this guy was operating 10 minutes late, you would actually see these departure times down below. These predicted departure times would all be reflective of that as well. And once again, these configurations are what you get out of the box, but these can be reconfigured, and you can edit this view to show the different layouts and to reconfigure them. So I can edit this, I can pick different components, I've got different metrics. If I'm connected into the vehicle's diagnostics port, I can actually get speed, I can get engine speed, what gear they're in, etc. I've got a collection of different route ladder views, different event logs, etc. And I can configure, just by dragging and dropping, I can pull these things in and choose from these different components to show where my vehicles are and create a view. I may want to create one that's a very common one that we may want to create is add a new one. We'll add a new layout. We'll make it a single panel. I'm just going to drag the map in here. I can preview this so I can see exactly what it looks like. I've just got a big Google map now where I can take a look at it. And these are all linked. So if I've got it hovering on a specific route from a previous screen, this one will be updated to reflect that as well. I can go back and I can save this. So say I want to just have one called map. I can save that like this. And now I've got a new one that shows up in the Vehicles Monitor tab. So when I close this one down and refresh the screen, I should have 4. So this is the Vehicles Monitor. It's very configurable. There's lots of options that we can do. The Street View is very useful. We've also got the different options in the map. Like I said before, you can pick and choose which layout you want to have. You can choose whether the traffic view is turned on. It's a very familiar view for users who are used to using Google Maps. It's easy to navigate. I can use my mouse wheel to zoom out and see where all my vehicles are. I can click on those vehicles, and now I get to see their routes just by double clicking on it. Very easy, user-friendly type of configuration for people to use this screen. The last piece I'm going to show you is our our history replay. So this actually allows us to take a look at what a vehicle has done on a given day. So I can choose from many different data elements that I have. I've got all of these different work events. I've got different message types. If I'm receiving out of coverage, adherences, etc., I can select which ones of these I want to see. And I can select what vehicles. So say I want to look at Route 2. I only want to look at vehicle 901. I can click on this, Route 2, 901. I hit select. And now what I've got is I've got this view. I've got a 2-hour view starting at 6:30 in the morning of vehicle 901 on Route 2. I can see everything that this guy has done. And you can see I've got some speeding events that I've captured where he's gone over speed. I can double click on these and you can actually see where those have occurred. I can start at the very beginning here. I can select this first one. You can see this little ghost image of the vehicle, and I can actually click play here and actually watch this vehicle as he moves through these events. And as we see, I'm running this at 10 times speed, so I'm running very quickly. I can run it a little higher. And you can actually track where this vehicle has gone. You can see he's driven this little bit, he's crossed that stop, and now he's on his way through through his route. And I can slow this down. Say I want to look at it a little slower now and I want to track this guy. And where this becomes very useful is that if you get a customer complaint that says, I didn't see this vehicle cross the Maple and Thompson stop, you can actually see what happens, and you can find out what time it was supposed to be at. You can go back in history and you can actually track and see exactly what happened. So here you'll see whether he actually crosses this stop or not, which he does. He reaches the stop right now and he drives on. So here it's very obvious that in this situation, vehicle 901 at 6:30 in the morning, he was supposed to stop at this stop, and it looks like he drove right past it. So in this case, you found a situation where you can actually go talk to the driver who was driving the vehicle at that time and resolve this issue for your customer. So this is the overall package for Streets Web. Just to recap, it's a pretty comprehensive solution. It goes right back to the creation of a schedule through to your daily operations management. Gives you a very configurable view in real time of where your vehicles are, and you're tracking them in real time. You can track their schedule adherence. You can track whether they're en route or not. And the other nice thing about this is that it ties into our passenger information system. So now you've got a vehicle to actually track them in real time from the back office, as well as communicating the status of your vehicles in real time to your passengers on the street using the web application that also works on their mobile devices. So this is the Streets Web as a package, and that concludes the demo.